Hello, my Belfast 1000 Nation. How is everyone doing today? We are back. All right, we are starting this one off with Destination Declassified. This one's titled The Most Violent Extraterrestrial Incident Ever Documented. E.T. got angry. All right, let's hop into it. So go ahead, turn your lights down low, put on something comfy, cut up with someone special. Let's get spooky.
On our alien and UFO channel, Destination Declassified. If you have any interest in the search for life outside of Earth, don't forget to check out Destination Declassified for all your UFO and alien news. Now, please enjoy. It is known as one of the most violent cases involving extraterrestrials ever to be documented. UFOs appeared in the skies above a small Brazilian city and discharged lights that caused injuries to many men, women, and children. It is a rare case that culminated in at least 2 deaths and the alleged suicide of the commander of the Brazilian Air Force. And yet, surprisingly, little is known about the Colares UFO flag outside of Brazil. On the northeastern coast.
So we are getting a little strange here. Shit. Okay.
Brazil is the second largest of the Brazilian states, Para. Here, the island city of Colares is separated from the mainland because of its location in the Amazon River Delta, as it empties into the Atlantic Ocean. During the late 1970s, at the time of the events in question, there were approximately 2,000 residents living there. Colares relied heavily on the simple professions of fishing and farming. This makes the occurrences seem all the more credible. There have been no reports of strange incidents before, but most of the sightings began in August of 1977. Abel Trindade was at home on the 14th of September 1977. It was 9:30 p.m. and he was listening to the radio when he saw a blue light coming through the ceiling. He became paralyzed and unable to scream for help. After the incident, he suffered from a sore throat and headache for several days. It was very early in the morning on the 4th of October in Belém, Brazil, when 48-year-old farm worker Benedito saw a bright blue light. It was hovering just above a treetop. It stayed there for a few seconds before slowly moving away. It made no noise, and although Benedito was afraid, he was unharmed. Unlike another 40-year-old farmer, Manuel dos Santos, just 3 weeks later, he was in bed when suddenly the interior of his house was lit up by a bright light that came through the roof. Manuel tried to get out of bed but was paralyzed and unable to scream for help. After several minutes, he could eventually stand up, but the left side of his body was both sore and numb for over a week. In the days that followed, he would see many lights on the horizon, very low in the sky. They would slow down, speed up, and then suddenly disappear. On the 23rd of January 1978, Manuel Filho went down to the beach to meet his friends and go fishing. As he arrived, he saw a strange light hovering over the beach. He realized that the light was emanating from some sort of object. It was about 10 feet wide and 5 feet high. It was dark in color, yet somehow transparent, and with a green bluish light underneath. Manuel ran back to his father's house to get his brother. By this point, many of the people were afraid of the UFOs and their light beams, so his brother refused to come. When he returned to the beach, his friends were waiting, and they all saw the craft leave at a very high speed. These are just 4 of over 300 sightings that were reported in Colares and the surrounding towns and villages during 1977 and 78. Several people described seeing lights at night and then being...
Right off the bat, I am a firm believer that we are not alone in this universe. I don't know what else is out there. I don't know if it's something like I can't say that I believe that there's like Martians and aliens and everything else out there, but I do not believe we are alone in this universe. It's way too big. And I forget who it is. I think maybe Stephen Hawking said that if there is alien life out there, there's only 3 reasons why they would want to visit us: to help us, to study us, and to enslave us. That's scary. Like, all 3 of them scary. I mean, don't get me wrong. Getting help from aliens. There is such thing as learning too much too fast. You know, sometimes, even if we see something, we're like, nah, that's not real. There's something behind that. There's things in this world that sometimes our brains just can't comprehend. It's like, nah, call them bull. And yeah, alien help would be amazing, but imagine the strain it would put on everyone. I'm just saying, that's some. I don't know how I feel about any of it.
Some were even able to show burn marks and scarring where they had been hit. Others showed strange symptoms, such as hair loss in areas where the beam had struck, or rashes and numbness. The situation had become so bad that many of the citizens were leaving the area. This compelled the mayor of Colares, as well as officials from about 30 other villages in the area, to request that the Brazilian government send in the Air Force. The mayor said that there wasn't a moment of peace during that time. It was a chaotic situation, and many of the women and children were being evacuated from the island, although the men would stay to protect their homes and belongings. At night, the men would build large fires and shoot projectiles into the air, hoping that it would scare away what they called the chupa chupas. In Latin America, there has long been a mythology surrounding livestock deaths and their suspected ensacunation. The creature assumed to be the culprit for these happenings is known by the Portuguese word chupacabra, which translates as goatsucker. The people of Colares now used a similar word to describe the UFOs that they had encountered. Many of those who had been struck by the beams were left with small depressions or marks on their skin. Some also said they felt as though blood had been drawn during the attack, and this resulted in fainting and reports of anemia in some of the victims through loss of blood. At first, strange lights were seen at night, out over the Atlantic Ocean, and were described as being vague and shapeless. But as the lights came closer inland, they were actually discovered to be UFOs. Some of these crafts were said to be oval, others were saucer-shaped or disc-like, with spinning lights revolving around the exterior. Some were described as umbrella-shaped, and others as hat-shaped. Some silver, and others brown. Some huge, and others quite small. It appeared as though there were several types of UFO, and all converging on the one place. The Portuguese translation of the word, unidentified flying object, is extremely complex, so the islanders used many other words to describe their experiences, calling the strange phenomena names such as the worm, the thing, the fire, the animal, or the bug. Because they came from the direction of the Atlantic, some of the local people thought that the UFOs were rising up out of the sea. This led to many theories about an underwater base.
I mean, there's that possibility. We have only studied like very deep of the sea. There's parts of the oceans that we can't even get to because we're not smart enough. And if we are smart enough, we just don't have the money to do it. Because I'm sure there's someone out there who's figured out how to get to the bottom of some of these trenches that no one can get to because of the mass on it. But, you know, they don't have the ability to do anything about it. I mean, we've all seen War of the Worlds. If you haven't, go watch War of the Worlds. I mean, lightning comes down, and these things that's been under the ground come to life and just start taking over everything. Who's to say that there's not aliens already in our oceans, just waiting, biding their time? For one, it makes you never want to go swimming again. Has anyone seen little Johnny? I think a UFO got him. He swam out past the buoy. No, I'm good. Screw that.
On the 29th of October, Benedito Campos and his pregnant wife, Sylvia Marie, were relaxing in their living room. Through the window, they could see an oval-shaped object hovering outside. It was silver in color and appeared to have a green searchlight. As the couple watched, the light fired through the window, directly hitting Sylvia and causing her to fall into a trance-like state. She later said that she felt as though her veins had swollen after she had been struck. While Benedito was trying to help his wife, the couple saw a pair of figures enter their property. One of the figures was carrying a golden torch. A neighbor came running to the house to help the couple, and the figures left. Now almost catatonic, Sylvia was carried by her husband to the neighbor's home, whilst the strange object seemed to follow them. It then struck Benedito with its green beam of light, leaving him almost paralyzed. The neighbor helped to get the couple to his boat so that they could be taken to the nearest medical center. The neighbor reported that the UFO followed them to the boat, but did not emit the beam again. The couple had to stay in hospital for some days after their terrifying experience. It was feared that Sylvia may suffer a miscarriage because of her distress, and Benedito endured a debilitating bout of depression. His mother said that she found him weeping frequently in the days following their ordeal, and the Camposes were not the only people to see figures inside of the UFOs. In January of the following year, Francisco Enrico de Souza was approached by a light in the sky. As it got nearer, he could see that the light was part of a much larger UFO. The object was cylindrical in shape, 15 feet across and at least 25 feet in diameter. Spellbound, Francisco was rooted to the spot as he stared up at the craft. Once it was directly overhead, a door dropped open, emitting a great deal of light. He could see two people sitting in the craft, as though it was a car. They looked to be a male and a female, and sat completely still, never moving. Then it was though a magnet pulled Francisco up. Terrified, he grabbed onto a palm tree, wrapping his arms and legs around the trunk. The light was very hot, burning his skin, and Francisco was in a great deal of pain because his chest was scraped raw from clinging onto the tree. He thought he was going to die, and began to cry. Suddenly, some sort of hot liquid was poured onto him, burning his skin even more, but Francisco would still not let go. Eventually the doors to the craft closed, and it flew away. It was late October in the nearby town of Santo Antonio da Tua. Just before midnight, Manuel do Espirito Santo was hanging out in front of his house with his high school buddies, Julio, Polo, Deca, and Carlito. Suddenly, Manuel could see a reddish-orange star-shaped object heading in their direction from the east. As it got closer, the light became more yellow. The object stopped about 60 feet in front of the group of friends. Manuel could now see that it was about 4 to 5 feet wide and barrel-shaped with two tubes leading off. One of the tubes was red, the other blue. The top half of the object emitted a blue light, and inside sat two human-like creatures who appeared to be flying the craft. There was some sort of division between the two crew members, who seemed to be a male and a female, and were wearing headphones and glasses. The red tube was pointed at Manuel and his friends, and a red light ray hit the group. Manuel felt like he had been electrocuted. He became semi-conscious and was unable to move his arms and legs. The craft now began to move away. It rose up in a swaying motion, gaining speed and altitude as it did so. Manuel felt numb for several minutes until the paralysis eventually wore off. Clodemira was able to describe her late-night visitor in even greater detail. She was asleep in her bed when a bright flash of light awoke her. The light beamed down from the roof of her house and struck her, burning her left breast. Now, in a lot of pain, she tried to scream but was unable to make any noise. She saw that the object was umbrella-shaped, and from within it, she could see two occupants. They had clear skin, oriental eyes, and large ears. The figures were dressed in green, skin-tight suits. One of them carried some type of gun, which had fired at Clodemira. She was struck again with a beam of light and collapsed. The experience left her with a sickening headache and weakness for several days. Her health was never fully restored. She was treated by the local doctor, Dr. Calvajo. Dr. Calvajo had treated many of the victims and saw their injuries firsthand. The doctor was only 22 at the time, newly qualified and skeptical of the UFO and extraterrestrial stories. She worked at the local medical center during the Colares UFO flap.
I would be moving away from this place. I mean, no. Why would you want to live there? You know, that's not. Got anal probed by like 5 different aliens, but you know. Yeah, no. No. I would not want to be a lab rat, a test subject to an alien in any way, shape, or form. They would cut my big butt open. That's not happening.
Carvalho treated over 30 people who had claimed to have been attacked by the Chupa Chupa beam. She said that the victims suffered from burns that were nearly always on the neck and or chest area. The burns would look very similar to a bite mark, 2 small parallel puncture wounds. Many of the victims would also have symptoms of anemia. This led to a belief in some of the UFO-affected areas that the beam of light was somehow targeting people for their blood. The doctor kept and compared notes about her patients and noticed that they appeared to have been chosen at random. They were both male and female and of different ages. They all had similar symptoms though: a raised temperature, chronic migraines, nausea, body tremors, dizziness, and extreme fatigue. Many also complained of an intense burning sensation around the area, that they had been hit by the beam, and typically they also had 2 small puncture marks. Carvalho found that all of her patients had wounds to the torso, and that their hair would later fall out at the point of impact. She was curious as to what could cause those sorts of burns, and she was also baffled by the hair loss. Many of the victims never had hair regrow in the affected areas again. She took 2 of her patients to the capital of Berlin for further treatment, and they later died. One had flu-like symptoms, and the cause of death given was a stroke. Strangely, the 2 small puncture wounds on her left breast were not mentioned on the death certificate. Dr. Carvalho had treated cancer patients before and was familiar with radiotherapy treatment, and she felt that the burns were consistent with that type of therapy associated with cobalt radiation. Most of her patients told her the same story. The UFO would arrive without warning, and a 3-inch beam of light would hit them. Then, after they had been struck by the beam, they were paralyzed, as though a heavy weight was pushed against their body. Their eyes were open, and although they would try to scream, they would find it impossible. The beam was almost too much to bear, and felt like a cigarette burn. Eventually the light beam would withdraw, and the craft would disappear. It seemed that the alien attackers never had to search for their targets. There was no searchlight or spotlight that gave a victim any warning that an attack was imminent. The craft would just come down, and then the beam would strike. The precise target on the body would be random, sometimes the face or torso, sometimes an arm or a leg. The Regional Air Command of the Brazilian Air Force arrived 90 days after they had been requested to begin their investigation, with a group of only 30 men. The core team comprised of just 6 men. The doctor would later report that she was initially ordered by the Air Force to persuade the locals that it was all just a case of mass hysteria, and that the people were suffering from some sort of sociogenic illness. The authorities did not want widespread panic, but the doctors refused to do this, even though she was treated with dismissal. No longer cynical, she had experienced the phenomena herself when she was walking down the main street in Colares late one afternoon. She saw some sort of UFO hovering quite low over the road. It was cylindrical in shape, and there were 2 small beings inside of the craft. She believed they were no more than 4 feet tall. The investigation into the strange events was headed by Captain Uringe Hollander, who was head of the information.
That's just weird. Okay, for one, how is someone going to say it's mass hysteria? I mean, I get the general idea of mass hysteria. It's a mass group of people all thinking the same freaking thing, and it causes them to go into hysterics, blah, blah, blah. I get it. But it sounds to me like everyone's encounter is slightly different. You know, like even the things that are happening to them are slightly different. Chest, head, neck, arm, legs. And it's weird that there's not hair growing back yet. That does kind of make you think, you know, some sort of radiation or something. Like, is this area that they live in high in radiation to where, you know, that would be believable that they're getting, just coming in contact with something naturally? Has anyone looked into that? There's so many questions I have. Like, okay, the first one. Is there high amounts of radiation where they live where they could just come in contact with something that's radioactive and, like, maybe there's radiation on a plant. They got hit by it, and it kind of like cut them, and then it just festered and got bigger and made it look like that. Question 1. Question 2. What's the bright lights they're seeing? Is it like some sort of hallucination from this radioactive plant or animal or whatever they're coming in contact with? Question number 3. Why is it all in just different places? Like, who's going out there and having radiation put in like their neck, their chest, their arm, their leg? Why is everyone different? Why is all the ages different? Why is it from different areas and everyone's just... See what I mean? There's too many questions. There's not enough of the same for me to believe that it's just mass hysteria and everyone's just losing their freaking mind. And I'd be so angry to know, no, this really happened. This is what's happening to me, and you're just trying to tell me I'm crazy? No, I'd be angry. Tell me I'm crazy. I mean, I might be, but you don't need to tell me that.
Shoot. And his second in command, Sergeant Flavio Costa. The two men led all communications during the inquiry. From the late 77 to early 78, they carried out a very comprehensive investigation into the sightings. They interviewed hundreds of witnesses from Colares and the surrounding villages in what became known as Operation Saucer. The team began evidence gathering, but they had little in the way of equipment for the undertaking, just a few cameras and tape recorders.
Did he say what year this took place in? If he did, I don't remember. I would like to know what year this took place in.
However, many of them were able to experience the phenomenon for themselves and saw the mysterious UFOs many times during the investigation. They became so familiar with the schedules of the craft that they could predict where and when one would appear next, and were able to take footage and photographs of what they saw. This included a film of the craft going into the sea. Unfortunately, after only 4 months, Operation Saucer was ordered to close down. However, by this point, Captain Hollander and Sergeant Costa had collected together a report of over 500 pages, as well as more than 200 photographs, film of the UFOs, numerous sketches, and maps showing the routes that the craft would take. Although it had now officially been closed, the investigators continued to work on the case because of their own personal interest. In spite of their findings being top secret, random pages from the inquiry started to leak out to the press, and ufologists were able to assemble a file of over 300 encounters and sightings. Over half of these incidents had been experienced by the investigators themselves.
Good Lord.
20 years later, Captain Hollander was interviewed for a Brazilian UFO magazine. He had been retired for quite some time and decided that he wanted to share his first-hand knowledge and evidence of the Colares flap with the world. During this interview, he told a strange story of his experience during the 1977 investigation. Like many of the other witnesses that he had questioned, he was awoken at night by the beam of bright light. He then felt the presence of a being enter his room and lay down beside him. The being had no discernible facial features and spoke into Hollander's ear with what he described as a metallic-sounding voice, telling him that he meant him no harm. Only 3 months later, Captain Hollander was found hanged at his home from a suspected suicide. This led to many conspiracy theories, and it was alleged that the government murdered Hollander in order to shut him up. Other theories about what was really...
No, government wouldn't do that. Government wouldn't do that. You can trust the government 100%. The government would never lie to you. I'm 100% certain that no government of any state, country, province, anything has ever killed anyone to let information get out. It happens all the time.
Going on in Colares have led to speculation about Russia and China using the area for testing of new technology. This is always the case when there are UFO sightings over the Americas. There have also been rumors about...
Yeah, that gets me. That gets me every time. Oh, we don't know what that was. It was probably someone just experimenting with some... There's that many things out there that the government doesn't know about people experimenting with, where they're just like, we don't know. No. If the government isn't a part of it, and someone privately is testing a ship that is going faster and can do things that theirs don't, they're going to be looking into the freaking thing and be like, hey, we want that. We're taking you, your whole family, we're moving you to a base. No one's ever going to know that you existed, and you're going to build these things for us for the rest of your remaining life, and you're going to teach everyone else that's around you how to do it. That way, when you're finally dead and gone, we can still have it. That's my opinion. This is my opinion, you know.
CIA drones, and even top...
Like they say, opinions are like buttholes. Everyone's got one, and they're all different.
Secret testing carried out by the USA itself. So it's unknown which country's governments, if any, would have been responsible for the captain's death. Ball lighting is often used as an explanation for UFO sightings, and has been offered up as a reason for the lights that was seen entering several homes in the area, but there is little evidence for this. Also, not a lot is known about ball lighting, and it's difficult to explain one strange phenomenon with something else that is just as inexplicable. Because many of the victims were asleep or in bed at the time of their encounters, sleep paralysis has been proposed as a reason for their experience. Sleep paralysis is a documented condition, usually affecting a person as they are either falling asleep or just waking up. This would explain some of the things felt by the eyewitnesses, but not the burns, puncture marks, or other later ongoing symptoms, such as headaches and a lack of mobility. In 2005, a group of Brazilian ufologists were successful in their campaign to have the Air Force open some of their classified files. It became clear that Brazil had quite a long history of government involvement in UFO hunting, and there had been top-secret investigations into sightings or unidentified aerial phenomena since as early as 1954. Much of the evidence on file had been gathered by the Air Force, but there were also reports from the Brazilian Army, Navy, and intelligence personnel. A lot of data had been collected, including photographs and film, as well as written documentation. The Air Force finally agreed, after acknowledging the importance of ufology. Several of the files were examined, including reports from Colares. The astounding occurrences that took place during Operation Saucer make it one of the most important events in ufology. Although many details of the incident have never been revealed, several of the key witnesses have since died, and much of the evidence is still classified. And so, we may never know the full story of the infamous Colares UFO incident.
Whoa. Alright, here's my thing. I'm not saying they are, if UFOs are real, who's to say that they haven't visited? I mean, if they have the ability to travel light years from wherever they're at to here, or whatever the case may be, they have probably technology that can do so much stuff. Anyone could probably be an alien, cloaking, disguises. What if like every government has come together and made like the Men in Black kind of situation? We wouldn't know. Unless they told us, we wouldn't know. I mean, you got conspiracy theorists out there that everyone thinks are crazier than all get out. What if they ain't? What if they the same ones and we're the crazy ones? I just freaked myself out. That's yep. We're moving on. Yep. I ain't sleeping tonight, thinking there's going to be an alien putting things in my boom boom. All right, we're going to do a little life of luxury today. This one is called Something Horrible Happened to Her Sister. Let's get started.
This girl's got to be pretty messed up if her own sister's afraid of her.
I don't feel safe staying with her.
What? Yes. What you yelling for, bro?
Hello, Lux Army. Let's smash 100,000 likes if you want more new videos. So for this episode, we received an email from an 18-year-old girl named Leah who thinks there's something horribly wrong with her sister. Leah says that one night, her sister came home late and said she was in an accident and her face was covered in bandages. Ever since then, her sister has not been acting the same. Leah says that her sister goes out into the woods for hours every night, and when Leah asks her sister what she was doing, she just stares at her and smiles. She sent us this video for proof. Leah told us that she feels unsafe being alone with her sister right now, so tonight we're going to head out to their house to see what's going on. Let's go.
No.
Bro, I have to say, this girl's gotta be pretty messed up if her own.
I'm sorry. No. Oh god, that kind of freaked me out a little bit. I hate it when things just run up. No, I would have. Oh, I would have kicked her right in the head. Sister, not. I'd kicked her right in the head. No, it'd come right at me and smack with the Louisville Slugger right across the face.
Her own sister's afraid of her.
Dude, you don't know what kind of accident that her sister got in. I think we should be more sensitive until we know more about this.
Dude, you saw the video she sent us. There's something wrong with that
Bro,
girl.
let's just go to their house, okay? And try to sit down and talk to both of them.
Okay, fine.
I love Life of Luxury. Okay, it is just some of the stupidest stuff you'll ever watch, but it is so creepy all at the same time. Like you have the chills and the goosebumps while hysterically laughing out. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Your destination is on.
All right, wait, it's up here. It's up here.
Okay,
Chester
Dude, this
always
place is
knows.
creepy. It's just surrounded by woods.
let's just go on. Are you gonna be calm?
Let's see what's going on in there.
Okay, let's talk.
You keep on knocking, but you can't come in.
Hi. Leah. Hi. Parker. Can we come in and talk about your sister?
Maybe right now is not a good time. My sister is still recovering.
I mean, Leah, we just drove like 3 hours to come see you. If you don't feel safe in your house, then we need to come in and talk.
Okay, you gotta be really quiet though.
Okay, let's go.
Oh, it's got to be really quiet. You want them to come
Okay,
in.
Leah, thank you for
It's like,
letting us sit down.
No
and
one
talk.
knows you're here. Now shut up.
So, can you tell us what's going on with your sister?
Listen, you need to be really quiet. She told me not to have anyone over here.
Why doesn't she want you having anyone over?
I think she's embarrassed about her face.
So have you tried talking to her?
I don't feel safe staying with her.
What do you mean you don't feel safe with her? She's your sister. Just is that her? That's her.
What the?
Gal, right? It's nice to meet you. Do you want to like sit down and talk with us?
No.
No. Okay.
Dude, what's wrong with her?
Have you heard me?
I don't know. Why are you guys freaking out? Can you tell us more about the accident that she was in?
She got in a car crash last week, and she sent me this.
Show me something.
Show me something. No. Me, accident, be home soon, head.
Leah, did you pick her up
Master
from the
Leopard.
hospital like that?
No, she walked in the front door like that.
Bro,
Leah, could you excuse us for a minute?
What?
You just
What?
need to talk. You want to talk. What?
dude, I don't think that's her sister.
Dude, what are you talking about?
That text did not seem normal, and she's covering her face. How do we even know that's her?
Dude, you're acting kind of prejudiced right now. All we know is that this girl was in an accident, like last week? Of course she's going to be acting weird. I'm just worried that the accident affected her mentally, and that's what we got to be worried about. Not whatever this is.
Dude, why did her face look like that? It was messed up.
Listen, I don't want to hear any more of this. I know if I were in an accident like that, I would just want people treating me normally, not like a freak. Okay? Let's just sit back down.
You tell him, Parker.
I think we might want to go and try to talk to your sister. Can you show us what her room is, or just tell us where it is?
It's down a hole over there.
Okay, yeah, let's go for it. We're done with this. Okay, dude, let's knock on it. Ready?
Yeah.
Gail? Hi. Gail, sorry to just open the door like that, but I knocked. How are you feeling? I know it was probably difficult for you to get hurt like that and feel alone after, but you gotta let us help you.
Is that her jaw cracking?
So we were actually talking to Leah, and she was suggesting that she might not want to stay here tonight. Do you think that would be better? Okay, sorry. Wasn't trying to upset you. Okay, let's go.
What was that?
Just by talking to her there, she clearly went through something awful.
What do you mean?
Alright, well, at this point it's getting pretty late. It looks like we need to spend the night.
Yeah, don't, she clearly went through something awful. What do you mean? Well, it's getting pretty late. But I'm not going to dive into this right now. It's too late for all that. We're just take my word. Something really bad happened to this fool. Yeah.
Not even night unless we set up cameras. We gotta see what the hell's going on in this place.
Alright, whatever, let's do it. Set the cameras. Good. Okay, let's just put a camera in Leah's room. Hi, Leah, can we just place a camera in your room really quickly? So, I'm going to be honest with you, Leah. I didn't really know the extent of the situation before I got here. I really don't even think you need a camera for this. We're just going to put the camera in here to make you feel safe, but we put cameras all around the house as well. I talked to your sister, and honestly, I just got to say, I just feel like she's going through a lot right now.
I don't feel safe right now. Can you stay in my room tonight?
I mean, Leah, it's just your sister. I know, what's with you guys treating her like she's a freak? I think you're going to be fine, okay? Just try to rest. Alright, let's go.
Please, don't go.
Just try to go to sleep, okay? Bro, I don't know what's going on in this house.
Guys, I'm in the hall right now. I think I hear something in Gail's room. Who was that? Who are you talking to?
Now what? Dude, what are you doing? Why are you bothering her?
Dude, there was someone in there with her.
Why do you keep bothering her? Why can't we just go to sleep?
There's someone else in there.
Okay, let's just go to sleep, man. Come on. This is ridiculous.
Whatever. Dude, how are you not freaked out by Gail?
Bro, why do you not lay off this girl? Just because her face is different doesn't mean she's different on the inside.
Dude, you know she's up to something. Why else was she in the woods?
Why are you treating this girl like a freak?
Dude, there's just something about her that I don't trust at all.
Okay, can we just try to go to sleep?
Whatever, dude.
I mean, you gotta respect the premise of Parker being like, she's just a person. Until she proves to me that she's not a person, she's just a person. I don't think she's a. I think Chester knows. He's a scaredy little guy, but he knows. He knows things. He knows where the houses is before the GPS tells him. He knows things. Parker's too trusting. They're all gonna die. When did they get a camera in her room? Like, I never seen them go in there. Like, she's been there the whole time. Did they just like, hey, we're going to put a camera? I never seen them do this. They're slipping, y'all. No. Oh, God. What?
Wake up.
What? Yes.
Let's go.
What you yelling for, bro?
I don't know. Get hurry.
Leah, what's the problem?
She's here! She's here!
Please come. What's going on?
She was watching me!
Where? Where is she?
Look in the car.
There's nothing in here. Listen, Leah, I think you're just having a nightmare or something. Your sister's not a monster, okay? She's just going through a tough time right now. All right, dude, let's just go. Are you okay? Okay.
Do you hear that? She's screaming again. Let's go.
She stopped, bro. All right, let's just go back to sleep. I think she's having a
I don't even know.
So we just woke up. It's about 6 a.m. We had to go check on Leah and review the footage from last night. So let's go. Okay.
Leah?
Where is she?
Check the closet.
Why would she be in the closet? Where do you think she went?
I don't know. I think I got to check downstairs.
Alright, yeah, check downstairs. I'll check up here. Check gals are on. There's no one here either.
Come down here.
What?
The back door's wide open.
You think they left through there?
I don't know where she went.
Let's check the security footage.
Okay.
Okay, let's sit down and check out this night cam footage, dude. Okay, so going through this, I don't really see anything interesting.
Wait, go back to the hallway. Dude, where's she taking her?
Dude, I don't know.
Something's wrong with Leah, bro. Look at her face.
Oh, wait, let me check the camera outside.
Bro, where are they going?
Dude, I don't know. Looks like they're going in the woods.
Why are they going in the woods?
I don't know. Why are you yelling?
Oh, dude, I told you. Gail did something to her. Gail did something to Leah.
Bro,
Dude, she did not go willingly into the woods in the middle of the night.
let's just go home and try to figure this out, alright, man? There's not much we can do right now. Unless you want to go in the woods and look for her.
All right, let's go home then.
Oh, shit.
Thank you guys for watching this episode. Let's try to smash 100,000 likes for the next episode to be released.
If they would have just went right back in there, I'm just saying. If they would have just went back in there, Leah'd still be with us. Poor Leah. Poor Leah. Alright, as per usual, we're going to end this one with a little MrBallen. This is called This Road is a Death Trap. Distressing content. Oh, God.
Fair warning, this story is going to be tough to listen to. It's a very sad story. But if this were to happen to me and my family, I would want people to know about it. So hopefully I can do it justice. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload 3 or 4 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please convince the like button to sing karaoke and give them a Rammstein song, but do not put the lyrics on the screen. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's story. In 1996, 21-year-old Katie Fleming was studying French at the University of Oregon. That summer, she was invited to go on a camping trip with some very close friends and some people she had not met before. Their destination was this beautiful spot along the Sierra Nevada mountain range in California, but as soon as they got there, Katie did not take in any of the beautiful scenery. Instead, she fixated solely on 25-year-old James Kim, who was one of those people she had not met before that was going on this trip. And for the people that were on this trip, they would say James and Katie immediately just fell in love with each other. And for the duration of this trip, they were inseparable. And then when they got back from this trip, James would actually move from Seattle to Oregon to be with Katie. And then after Katie graduated from college, the two got married in Las Vegas and then settled in San Francisco. James, who loved technology and always had, was quickly hired by a tech company to try out new technology and then write a review for the average consumer. Basically, James got paid to play with toys, and so he loved his job. The couple also opened 2
I love his job too. I want that job. Okay.
One was an apothecary.
How do we get that job? I want that job. I want to play with toys all day and get paid for it. That would be the most amazing thing ever. I want that job.
and the other sold eccentric clothing, and those two shops were managed by Katie full-time. By 2006, the Kim family had become very successful financially, and they had grown in size. They had a 4-year-old daughter named Penelope and a 7-month-old daughter named Sabine. Katie and James both adored their kids. But James especially was known for blowing off virtually everything and anyone to be with his daughters. In fact, his friends and family would say you couldn't even have a conversation with James if his daughters were in the room, because James would get distracted and just stare at his daughters and then would eventually just leave mid-conversation to go play with them. James was also known to bring his daughters to work virtually every chance he got, even if it really wasn't allowed at this company. On Friday, November 17th, James, Katie, and their 2 daughters loaded up into their station wagon and then drove.
That's like the sweetest thing ever. I don't want to know what happens. We're just going to stop there. Yeah. Oh, I don't want to do this. MrBallen, I love your stories. I do, but this is going to make me cry. I just know it. And I don't want to cry on TV. Oh, God.
North to Seattle. They planned on spending Thanksgiving with James's aunt and uncle who lived in the city. And also, James and Katie were considering leaving San Francisco and moving elsewhere, and Seattle seemed like a natural landing spot for them. So this trip served nicely as a chance to see family and to explore the area. And so late on Friday night, after a very long trip, they finally arrive in Seattle. And for the next couple of days, they have a wonderful time visiting with family and having Thanksgiving dinner. On Friday, November 24th, so a day after Thanksgiving.
Whoa, hold up. Okay. Fat boy moment. I'm sorry. Is that covered in bacon, bruh? I've got to try that. Okay. Sorry, that fat boy moment. That's covered in bacon. I want a turkey like that. Turkey wrapped in bacon. The turkey club Thanksgiving dinner.
After Thanksgiving, James, Katie, and their daughters loaded back up into the station wagon early in the morning. They said bye to James's aunt and uncle, and then they hit the road. But instead of just driving straight all the way to San Francisco, which would have taken the entire day and then some, they decided to make a stop in Portland, Oregon, where one of Katie's very close friends from college was going to meet them for lunch. And so after about 3.5, 4 hours, they arrive in Portland, they meet Katie's friend, and they have this nice lunch. And then afterwards, the family retired to a hotel where they crashed for the night. The next morning, the plan was originally...
That sounds reasonable. Okay. Long trips, nobody wants to drive 12, 15 hours straight. That sucks so bad. It's worse than jet lag. And, you know, this kind of gives you a chance to meet up with some friends and stuff that you ain't seen in years, probably. Cool. I don't want... Let's stop there. Everything's fine. Nothing bad happens. We're ending it there. Yep. It's like watching half an Old Yeller and turning it off before the dog goes crazy and it's got to be shot in the face. We're not doing the shooting the dog in the face part. Yep, we're done. We're stopping right here. They lived happily ever after. End of story. Yeah. Shit. We can't. We got...
to just get in the car and then drive all the way back to San Francisco. But Katie suggested to James that instead of just driving all day, why don't we just stay here for part of the day, leave in the afternoon, and we'll stop somewhere between here and home. We'll break up the drive one more time. James thought it was a great idea. They pulled out the map, and Katie found a nice family-friendly vacation spot that was almost exactly halfway between where they were and home. It was called the 22-Ton Lodge. It was located on the coast of Oregon in a town called Gulf Beach. And so James...
That'd be pretty. That's a bit pretty.
James and Katie think, perfect, this is exactly what we needed. Katie calls the lodge and she makes reservations for that night. And so that afternoon, after the family spent their nice day in Portland, they hopped in the car and they began traveling south towards the 22-ton lodge. At about 8:30 p.m., the family was still on the road making their way when James got really hungry and said, let's pull over and get a bite to eat. So the family pulls over at a Denny's restaurant in Central Oregon. They go inside, and then after a quick bite to eat, they get back out and they're on the road at 9 p.m. From the Denny's to the lodge was about a 2.5-hour drive. But after driving for 2 more hours, James realized they had missed a turn. So he told Katie about it, they looked at the map, and they realized if they were to backtrack all the way to that turn, it would add several more hours onto their trip. And so they began looking for an alternative path. And they found one. Instead of going all the way west to the coast and then all the way south to this lodge, which was the original plan, they could just go south from where they were all the way until they were parallel with this lodge. And then from there, they could just cut west along this road called Bear Camp Road. It would basically go straight to their destination. But what this map did not do a good job of explaining was just how dangerous Bear Camp Road was. It started at 900 feet of elevation, but very quickly went all the way up to 4,000 feet of elevation before it went over the backside of this mountain down to Gold Beach and where this lodge was. While the road is paved, it's incredibly narrow and it's basically cut into a mountainside. And so there's very steep drop-offs throughout most of this ride, and there are no guardrails protecting people from falling off. The summer is really the only time people should be on Bear Camp Road because that's when the road is maintained. In the winter, the road is not plowed, it's not maintained, and so even a light snowstorm could make the road totally impassable. And the road cuts through a very remote section of Oregon where there's just not many people around. So if you get in trouble out there, you're probably on your own. But the Kims were not aware of the dangers this road possessed, and so after going south for a while...
Map should have that on there. I'm sorry. They should be like, hey, you can take this road. You might die. You probably will. So don't, take out your own risk. That way people know. Map makers out there of the world, do that. Do that.
Well, they did turn on to Bear Camp Road and began slowly driving up the mountain. And so as James is driving, Katie falls asleep in the passenger seat, the girls fall asleep in back, and outside it begins to snow. An hour later, Katie wakes up from her sleep, and the first thing she notices is outside, it is snowing so hard that James now has the windshield wipers on full blast, and still you could barely see out the front windshield. She looked at her husband, and he was hunched over, white-knuckling the steering wheel, looking intently out the window, and she says to him, what's going on? Should we stop? Should we turn around? And James, without even looking at her, says, yeah, honey, I do want to turn around, but the road is so narrow, we can't. And then he would tell his wife that earlier they had actually driven through a fork in the road where there was enough space to turn around, and so now he was just hopeful that there'd be another fork somewhere that would allow them to turn around. And so Katie was not excited about the idea, but she trusted James and said, okay, let's keep going. And so James just continues driving up this mountain pass, and you got to understand, they are driving on basically a cliff. On the left side, left of James, is just a sheer drop-off, and the road is totally slick from the snow. And so periodically, as James is driving, even though he's only going about 5 miles an hour, he would begin to slip and slide, and he's right on the edge of this cliff. And so it was a very, very stressful ride, and after several more miles of this, they were not reaching any turnaround. In fact, they would have to periodically stop on inclines, put up the emergency brake, and one of them would have to get out and clear branches and rocks out of this tiny little road to continue onward. And so finally, Katie says to James, you got to stop. You got to back out of here. That's our only choice right now. And so James put the car in reverse, and he opens his car door so he can look down at the edge of this cliff to make sure he doesn't accidentally veer off of it. And so very slowly, without even applying the gas, he began going in reverse, making sure he didn't go off the cliff. And for hours and hours they did this. This must have been so...
No. God, no. Oh, God. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. No. I have grown to like this family. I don't want to know what's about to procure. I don't. Oh God, this is going to be so bad. Please tell me they don't go off the cliff. Oh my God. This is stressful. This is so stressful. I don't want to.
Stressful, but finally they make it to this fork in the road that James had seen much earlier, and they're able to make a decision. They had two paths they could take. They could turn around completely and drive nose out along the path they came in on all the way to the highway, but that was a very far drive, and they knew that road was treacherous, and there was a cliff drop-off, and it was really just as dangerous as what they had been on, and they really were not keen to be on that road considering the weather. Or they could turn left and go down the mountain on this path that was way wider than the paths they were on. It was like this huge road, and it looked...
Stick with what you know. Stick with what you know, bro. No, you don't know what happens after this, bro. Just stick with what you know.
Like it went straight to the bottom of the mountain. And they're thinking, we don't know where this goes. The signage is not clear where this goes. But you got to figure, if you're going lower in elevation, the weather will not be as bad. And maybe if you go down this road, there'll be houses, or there'll be a gas station, or there'll be something. But whatever it is, it's probably better than going that way or that way. And so James turned the car and began driving down this new road. Unfortunately, this was the worst choice they could have made. This road they were now on was this long, winding dead end that was used by loggers in the summer. Now, normally, this mistake by the Kim family would have been caught, because there was supposed to be a big yellow gate that sat across this road just a little ways past this fork, blocking all traffic from proceeding any further. But vandals had recently come up and cut the lock on this gate, swung it open, and then locked it open. So the gate is completely off the road. And so as the Kims drove past where they normally would have been stopped, they didn't even see a gate. There was no gate anywhere, and so they just kept on driving. And from where this gate should have been, the road went from paved to dirt and full of potholes, and it narrowed considerably. The couple drove for 15 miles on this very tight, winding road that once again was on a cliffside, until finally they reached another fork in the road where they could either go right or they could go straight, but there was no sign telling them which way led to what. And so James stopped the car right in the middle of this intersection, and he and Katie look at each other and they know they're in trouble. So they get their phones out and they try calling for help, but they have no service. And so as they're struggling to place calls, one of them realizes it's no longer snowing. It's actually raining, and a lot of the snow on the ground seems to be getting washed away. And so after not being able to place calls for several minutes, they decide, you know what, it's 2 a.m, we're tired, let's sleep here, we'll leave the car running, it'll be nice and warm, and when we wake up in the morning, this rain will most likely have washed away the snow, and we can just drive out of here. And so the two are kind of relieved as they're saying this out loud, that this situation is not nearly as bad as it seems, we'll be just fine. And so Katie, James, their 2 daughters, they fall asleep with the car running, it's nice and warm, and when they wake up, Katie and James realize it's gotten much, much worse. At some point in the night, after they fell asleep, the temperature must have dropped again, and that rain became very heavy snow. And so all the water on the ground froze, and then almost a foot of snow fell on top.
Oh, for love of... Oh, my God. These poor people cannot catch a break. Do they have the kids in the car too? I'm sure they do. Oh my God. Oh my God. No, I don't. No. We should have stopped. We should have stopped a long time ago. Remember, I offered to stop. Just remember that.
But Katie and James, they didn't panic because they remembered when they first turned onto Bear Camp Road, they had seen a plow truck parked off of the side of the road. And so to them, that meant if it snowed along Bear Camp Road, it would get plowed. And so that day, the Kims just stayed inside of their car and they ate snacks and they read books and they kept the heater on and they waited to be rescued. But over the course of that entire day, nobody came down that road. No plows, no anybody. And Katie and James continuously tried their cell phones to try to punch out and get some help, but they never had any service. Also, Katie and James continuously honked the horn in case someone was in the area that might hear them, but no one ever came to their rescue. And so by the end of that Sunday night, Katie and James were really starting to get worried because they have a 4-year-old and a 7-month-old. They cannot be out here for very much longer. But they began to tell each other that, you know what, it's Sunday, maybe the plows don't come through on Sundays. Maybe they just don't work out here on Sundays. And so tomorrow, Monday, the plows will be out here, they'll come by and they will save us. Also, Katie and James began telling each other to reassure each other that, hey, tomorrow, Monday, that's the day we were supposed to be back in San Francisco. And so people are bound to notice our absence and they will report it to police and they will come out here and they will save us. So tomorrow we are going to get found. And so Katie and James, they put their 2 daughters in their car seats and James read them some bedtime stories and then the family fell asleep. The next day, Monday, the family did a lot of the same things they did the day before. They sat in their car, they kept spirits high, they tried to use their cell phones, which didn't work, they honked their horns to get people's attention. That didn't work. They tried to ration their food, and the whole time, they're keeping their eyes up each side of this road.
Plows are not going to go down a logging road. And if that much snow fell, they don't even know that there's car tracks down there. The car tracks are covered by the snow. Oh, these poor people. And they also went out of their way, took it. This is going to be so bad. No, please, God, no. Oh.
They're on in hopes a plow comes through. But all day long, no trucks, no plows, nothing comes down this road. Meanwhile, back in San Francisco, the family's absence was noticed by a family friend, but they didn't report it to police because they figured the Kim family had just decided to stay out a little bit longer and they would be back soon. By Monday night, Katie and James were officially terrified. They were almost out of fuel in their car. They were almost out of food. In fact, to compensate for their low amount of food, Katie had begun not only breastfeeding her 7-month-old, but also began breastfeeding her 4-year-old. Also, outside of their car, bears began kind of assembling and checking them out. And at first, Katie and James would scream and yell and try to scare them off. But the bears ultimately were not that fazed by them. They were not aggressive, but it meant the family did not feel comfortable getting out of their car. And so they're in this very claustrophobic situation where they are literally trapped inside of this small car where all the windows are covered with snow and they can't go anywhere. They can't call anyone. They're running out of their supplies. I mean, this is a terrifying situation to be in. Katie and James had been really strong to this point, but around this time, they began to act scared, and their kids picked up on it, and they started acting scared and fearful. And so the parents...
So if you haven't already, please subscribe. We're done. No, not this poor baby. No, we're not doing this. We're not doing this today, MrBallen. You can't make me. Oh, God. I don't. Okay, all right. Just stay positive. Everyone comes out fine. Even though he said, this is very emotional. Maybe this is the emotional part. Maybe everything is okay. Maybe everything will be okay.Maybe it's like one of those roller coasters, like, yay, family day. No, we're all gonna die. Yay, we all live. Maybe it's probably not.
We're trying their best to calm them down and tell them everything's going to be fine and they're going to get out of here soon. But in reality, Katie and James knew that if they didn't get found soon, they were probably going to die. The next day when they woke up, which was Tuesday, again, no cars or trucks came down either road. There was no plows. The snow just continued to pile up. And the food was running unbelievably low to the point where James actually left the car and went out looking for bear droppings because there's bears all over the place now. And he would pull the berries out of their droppings. And he and Katie began eating those. But after a while, they decided that was not a good idea because they might poison themselves. Their daughters, who the day before had been acting out of fear and...
That's smart, though. Grody. Very grody, but that's smart.
Anxiety
Smart boy.
were now lethargic and quiet. And the parents' response to this was to start fighting with each other about whose fault this was, when in reality, they were just totally scared about what might happen to them. Meanwhile, back in San Francisco, the family had still not been reported to police. And so that night, Tuesday night, the Kim family once again huddled up inside of their car. James read the kids' books, and then they all fell asleep. The next morning, Wednesday, they ran out of gas for their car. And so they had no way to heat themselves. And so James got the spare tire out of the back of the car, and he rounded up some magazines inside the car, and he lit a fire for the family to stand around and try to warm up by. And it worked, but the fire very quickly died out, and they couldn't find any wood that wasn't soaking wet to put on it. And so before long, they did not have a fire. And so all day that day, James and Katie were desperately looking up the road in hopes that a car or truck would come through. They never did. James and Katie tried their cell phones repeatedly, but they never got service. They honked their horns and they screamed out for help, but nobody heard them. And so before long, it was dark again, and the family was huddled up inside of their now freezing car, and all they could hear outside was the sounds of bears marching around the area. And so I'm sure James and Katie thought to themselves, I wonder if we'll survive the night. Meanwhile, back in San Francisco, that family friend who had noticed the Kims were gone on Monday, she did go to the police on Wednesday afternoon and reported them missing. And so a search party was being organized that night.
Oh my God. Okay. I get the premise of not wanting to, because it can cause more trouble than what it's worth. But, you try to call. If you ain't getting a hold of nobody, it's going straight to voicemail. Go ahead and do it. Just go ahead, call the police, be like, look, they were supposed to be back, they're not back. I don't really care if they get angry at me or not. They as long as they're fine, they can be mad at me if they want. I don't care. It's better than potentially them dying just to save face. No.
But of course, the Kim family would have no way of knowing that. The next morning, Thursday, the Kim family woke up. They survived the night. But at this point, James and Katie are speaking openly about the real possibility that they all might die. In fact, Katie says to James, you have to promise me if our two kids die out here, you have to kill me too. And James said he would. At this point, Katie and James do not believe a truck or a car or anything is going to drive down this road and save them. They believe their only hope of being rescued is by sending a smoke signal up into the air that a pilot might see. So they pull off all four tires of their car, and then they pull everything out of the car that might burn, and they stack that on the tires, and that included Penelope's prized stuffed lamb. And then once they had their big pile, they lit it on fire, and fairly quickly, a large black billowing cloud of smoke was going straight up to the sky. And for a minute, the Kim family was very optimistic that they were about to be found, that certainly someone was going to see the smoke and come find them. But unfortunately, the fire burned up very quickly, they couldn't light it again, and nobody flew overhead. And so before long, the family is once again huddled inside of their freezing cold car that night. There's bears walking around outside. They're basically out of food. Their kids aren't even crying anymore. They're just silent and cold and miserable. And as they're all shivering and trying to stay warm, James realizes he needs to do something drastic or his family's going to die. And so the next morning, Friday, when they get up, James tells Katie that he had been studying the map, and there's a town about 4 miles east called Galice that he believes he can get to in about 2 hours. Katie immediately said, no, you cannot leave us. We need you here. There's probably a search party out there looking for us right now. We need to stay together so we can all be found. But James's instincts were telling him that no one was coming for them, or no one was going to actually find them in time, and so their only hope was if he ventured off and found help. And so Katie finally reluctantly agrees to let him go because he seemed really confident. And so at 7:45 a.m. that morning, James gave his two daughters a big hug and a kiss, told them he loved them and he would see them soon. And then he hugged his wife and said he loved her, and then he turned around and walked up the road out of sight. At the same time, unbeknownst to the Kim family, hundreds of searchers and helicopters are all over Bear Camp Road looking for him. 2 days later, on Sunday, December 3rd, so a week after the family had originally gotten stuck, A helicopter pilot that was part of the search effort was flying around Bear Camp Road when he noticed footprints in the snow below. When he started following these footprints, and eventually the footprints kind of disappeared under some trees, and then he couldn't pick them up again. And so without that much fuel left, he decided he would just backtrack and follow the footprints back to their origin. And so he retraced these footprints for quite a while until he came to a clearing, and in the middle of the clearing was a car, and next to the car was Katie waving an umbrella back and forth. The pilot immediately knew who he was looking at, but he didn't have enough fuel to actually land and pick her and her family up. And so instead, he just hovered down as low as he could, and he made good eye contact with her to reassure her that, I see you and we're coming for you. And then he marked on the map where they were. He flew off to the search headquarters, and just minutes later, another helicopter was spun up. They flew to that same location, and they were able to land in that clearing. And as soon as the pilot got out, he saw...
Oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. Oh, I can't handle this. Ooh. Yep. Start tearing up.
Katie running up to him, carrying her two daughters, who looked like they were in pretty good shape. And she's crying tears of joy, and she's thanking him profusely. And then when she's right up in front of him, she says, are you here because of my husband? Did James tell you where we were? And the pilot looked visibly confused. Katie picked up on it, and she explained how just 2 days earlier, James had left to go to the town of Colares to get help, and he still hadn't come back yet. And so at this point, the pilot understood what was happening, and so he looked down, and he said, no, ma'am, we still have not found James. Katie was devastated, and she cried as she and her daughters were loaded into the helicopter and airlifted out of the forest and brought to a hospital. There they would make full recoveries. Meanwhile, the search effort, which had been all over Bear Camp Road, was suddenly focused exclusively on the area around where their car was. And professional trackers were brought in to look for James's tracks, and they found them fairly quickly and began following them. James, after departing his family to go look for help, which must have been the most difficult decision he had ever made in his entire life. He loved his family more than anything, and he had to abandon them in the middle of the wilderness with no food, with no power, and he has no idea if he'll ever see them again. And so after leaving them behind, he walked 3 miles up the road they came in on, and then instead of just continuing on that road in the direction of Colares, he deviated and walked off the road. He actually went straight down one of the cliffs until he hit a river. And it's believed that maybe he saw the river from up on the road and thought that would be a faster way to get to Colares. But either way, he got down to the river, and as he walked, he would leave behind him little bits of torn clothing and torn paper to create a trail of where he was going, presumably so if he needed to, he could backtrack to his family. And so he gets down to this river, and for several miles he walks downstream. And then after being gone for at least 2 hours and not reaching the town of Colares, he must have realized he had either gone the wrong way, and that's why he had not hit the town, or he had miscalculated the distance, and that's why he had not hit the town. But either way, he did not turn around and go back to his family. Instead, he pressed on, believing he was their only hope. And so on he went, crossing over rivers, getting totally soaked in frigid water. He went up and down mountains, all over these totally rugged areas in nothing but street clothes. He had sneakers, pants, and a jacket on. He had no food, he had no water, and he just kept on going until it was nightfall, and he had covered about 10 miles at this point, and he laid down and he went to sleep. And that night must have been absolutely horrible as he thought about his family that was alone in the woods somewhere. He probably wondered if they were still alive. And the temperature was in the 30s, and again, he's just in street clothes. But he survives the night, and so the next morning, that Saturday, he gets up and he's right back at it, despite the fact that he was physically wrecked at this point. But for him, he didn't care. He was doing it for his family. And so all day he hiked in and out of freezing cold streams, up and down mountains, until finally he found himself at the bottom of this deep ravine next to a river where he just fell to his knees, fell forward, and died. He had literally just kept on going, looking for help for his family, until he eventually succumbed to hypothermia. James's body was located 2 days after his wife and his daughters were successfully rescued. It would...
No. Nope. want to do it. Oh, God. I'm not crying. I'm not crying. Nope.
Turn out, the town of Colares was not 4 miles away from the family's car. It was about 15 miles away, but that's from point A to point B on a map, like a straight line. But when you actually are hiking in the wilderness, you don't go in straight lines because there's mountains and there's rivers and there's things that get in the way. And so in order to get to Colares from where their car was, James would have had to travel 30 or 40 miles, zigging and zagging up over 4 different mountains. And so this was a suicide mission from the start. James ultimately covered 16 miles through some of the most treacherous terrain in the country, wearing nothing but his street clothes. The professional trackers that followed this 16-mile trail to his body, they called his journey superhuman. The helicopter pilot would later say he never would have found Katie and the girls had he not spotted those footprints first and then traced them all the way back to that clearing. And it would turn out those footprints were made by James after he left his family and walked off to get help. And so even though it cost him his life, James did ultimately save his family. So that's going to do it, guys. If you got something out of today's episode and you haven't done this already, please convince the like button to sing karaoke and then give them a Rammstein song, but don't put the lyrics up on the screen. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly 3 or 4 video uploads. We are now selling merchandise like flannels and hats and a whole bunch of stuff. You can buy it at shopmrballen.com. Also, go follow our shop's Instagram page called Shop Mr. Ballen. There you can find deals and upcoming promotions. If you want to get in touch with me, you can direct message me on Instagram or on Twitter. My username for both platforms is the same. It's JohnBallen416. I also have a ton of content over on TikTok where my username is MrBallen. We also have a second YouTube channel called MrBallen Shorts where we upload random short videos and lost episodes. If you have a story suggestion, please submit it to our subreddit just called MrBallen. It's linked in the description below. So whether I see you on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Reddit, YouTube, or some combination, just know that I really appreciate your support. And until next time, that's going to do it. See you.
That was so sad. Oh, God. But, I mean, either way, if it wasn't for him leaving, the family would still never have been found. I mean, yeah, he left, he died trying, but if he wouldn't have even tried, they would have never seen the feet print, none of it, and they would have never found the family. They would probably all have been dead. And you heard him, that was superhuman. I mean, that's super dad stuff right there. Okay. All right. Yeah. MrBallen, MrBallen, MrBallen. He does that. He does that. You don't ever know what to expect. He should come on and be like, hey, by the way, fat boy, you need some tissues this time. Bro. Just think. These kids are going to grow up without a father, but if it wasn't for the fact of him leaving, they probably wouldn't have been able to grow up at all. That's just craziness. It is. The strength that a father has whenever his family's life is on the line is amazing. Mothers are the same way. I remember whenever I was younger reading about how a mother like lifted a car off of her kid. It's just like, what? People can do amazing things when it comes to their family that you wouldn't figure a person could do. Mad respect for you. Mad respect. He might, I mean, he made the ultimate sacrifice. Either way, just him leaving them was probably the hardest thing he could have done, knowing that he might not ever see them again. But if he wouldn't have done it, they wouldn't have been found. They wouldn't have. They even said, we wouldn't have found you. That's... At least he'll be able to watch over him from above. I mean, he knows that his family's okay. That must have been the scariest moment of his life, thinking that he left his family all by themselves. He's about to die. And they could either already be dead, eaten by bears. God only knows what all was going through this poor man's mind. And that's... I'm going to make myself cry again. I got to go. All right. So, if y'all are a fan of the spooky, scary, strange, or deranged, think about subscribing. And please leave a thumbs up. They really help out. As always, be good to one another. I'll see you in the next one. Stay spooky.